This weekend, only at Macy's, it's our lowest prices of spring. How low? Diamond rings, pendants, and earrings, only $399, originally $1,500. Ninja blenders, now $89.99. And $395 men's designer suits, only $99.99. So if you're wondering why you should shop Macy's lowest prices sale, well, the name pretty much says it all. It's our lowest prices for one weekend only. Starts tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
Hello, hello.
Hey, doing well. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's JD here, and seeing that lovely
You're in
graphic
recovery
to
mode.
start, I got to tell you,
Yeah.
I got to
What are
update
they
it 'cause it's
sparkly
new
things?
now. We have a new graphic for Sunday Evening Jam. I'm JD, and I'm
Okay,
joined,
all right.
as always, by my friend Sarah J. How are you doing, Sarah?
I am so fantastic
This is
because
good to hear.
we had the best night ever last night.
It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun.
Well, one of our guests that's joining us today was in on the fun with us, and that is Jeff Tucker. We'll be joining him and Andrew Schmidt just shortly. They're both raring to go to talk about tribute bands and the evening that we had last night. And, we're going to get right into it. So let's introduce these guys, and I'll catch you up on some stuff. How's it going, Andrew? How's it going, Jeff?
Hey, guys. Oh, my gosh. I get to see everybody, but this is like my super tired face. So sorry, everybody.
We got to see your rocker chick last night, so that was cool.
Totally. Now it's the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm wearing my slippers and my pajama pants. So it's
Right
the
on.
opposite of last night.
Absolutely.
Can't wait anymore.
No, they're just like the solid black,
Excellent. So I want to do some follow-up on news that we talked about last week. The first bit of news I want to mention is, just briefly, I want to talk about Podlist 6. The Podlists have been coming out weekly right now to remind you of the talent that is out there. There are some really talented listeners, and it thrills me that they want to contribute their work to these Podlists. And I think we've got 8 submissions right now. April 30th is your deadline. Get cracking. Get those songs in. We want to hear them. We want you to share them. So that's news item number 1. News item number 2 is the mishmash that we talked about last week, and we'll give it a quick listen and backgrounder before I get into the update I have for you. Jeff Tucker, if you've been paying attention to the Sunday Night Jams, 3 weeks ago posited a theory about the song from Paul's first record, which I think is Saying Snow. What was it called again now? Can't wait anymore. Thank you. And use it up. And so then we talked about it the next week. And last week I decided to put the songs back to back, and I played them for you to just further Jeff's point that this is what it is. And I'll play it for you again right now.
What? Amazing.
So if you're listening carefully, in the left channel is Paul's solo record, and then the right channel is Use It Up. And I staggered them just by like maybe a quarter of a second so that you could hear it follow up. I was in contact with Paul Lanois earlier this week, and I asked him, what the deal is with this comparison. And I made mention of Jeff.
I did.
Said that, one of our astute listeners picked this up, and I'm just curious if there was any um,
Yeah.
if there was
Ends
any
with an S. Rose neath.
forethought into this.
Well,
And
doesn't end with
as
an S, but
most artists
a sound if you have a lisp.
are want to do, I don't think they listen to a lot of
Oh,
their previous work very often. And what he said was it was completely unrelated. It was completely accidental. And he had never noticed it before. So I didn't send him the clip, but um, I think that I think if I were to send him the clip, he'd be relatively surprised by how close it is. So that's
I
my
think
little
that
update
makes
on
it
that.
even cooler because it's like a subconscious thing that it just like came out of him from somewhere in here and,
Yeah,
came out. And I think that makes it really neat.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think so. So that's some Paul news. The other Paul news is earlier this week, they must be getting ready to hit the road again because he has put out his annual call for where do you want me to play. And Andrew, I'm sure you submitted Florida, and I'm sure Jeff, you submitted east of Bowmanville, northeast of Bowmanville. I
There'll
forget
be
the
two
name
of
of
us
right
there,
now. It
though,
starts with
so
an
it's
S.
perfect.
Oh, okay. Roseneath. Ah, shit. Yeah, sounds like an accent. Yeah, sure, sure. And I used to. So there's that. I'll tell you. Uh, I'd love to see him come to the city. I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him play here at a nice venue. That would be a lot of fun. But I would travel to see him as well because uh, I think they're really good. And I saw Sinclair's band live, and it was wonderful as well. Um, yeah, good, really good stuff. We've got 2 votes for Florida. In from the chat comes Soto McBackney. I can't pronounce that, but 2 votes for Florida will never happen, but it could be cool. If you are in the chat, tell us where you're from and if you'd like to see Paul there, or if you have any comments for Jeff, Andrew, or Sarah J. Um, that would be that would be great. I just noticed what you said there, and this is Tampa. Okay, perfect. Perfect. South Tampa. Okay, get it. Okay.
lot,
I I thought, well, there you go.
lot of
There
heat,
you
So
a lot
go.
of good
That's
energy.
perfect. I love
I
it.
saw a hip tribute band a couple weeks ago, and we'll segue into our hip tribute band conversation. I saw a hip tribute band just a couple weeks ago, and there was a big ice storm going on, and the ice storm was terrible, and it really impacted their crowd. And I was disappointed for them because they're called From the Hip, and they did a fantastic job. But it was disappointing that there were only just a couple people out to see them on this terrible night. This is markedly different from what we
I was
experienced
actually
last night
really
when Jeff
surprised,
Tucker, Sarah
like you
J,
talked
and
about the
myself all
crowd. I
got
was not
together
expecting that.
and went
I
to
was expecting,
see
a
the
mediocre
Strictly
sized
Hip
crowd,
at
but
the
that place
fucking
was packed.
Horseshoe,
And
the
we talked about it last
legendary
night. The
Horseshoe Tavern.
demographic of the age demographic
I
of the
think we
crowd.
were all
I thought it was
surprised
going to
when
be a
we
bunch of
walked up
geezers like
and there was a
Jamie and I. I didn't
motherfucking
expect there
line,
to be a lot of young people like Sarah, or even younger.
probably
But there
150
were.
deep, like at least 150,
Yeah,
200 deep.
and
And when we walked
to go
in,
back to the
this
energy to
band
run
had,
that into it,
I don't know,
you
in the
know,
stage area,
like
300 people
at what was it,
in
third
total.
or fourth song
I would
in,
guess I'm
the
really
entire
bad with
crowd
crowd
was
sizes.
belting out the
There was
But,
a
you
lot
lyrics,
know,
of
like
people there.
everybody,
there really
and the
was,
lead singer
right?
stopped singing,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
just, I was impressed. Like I just wasn't
Oh,
For
it
expecting
was
sure,
that.
though,
awesome.
that was the
So
thing, though,
it
is the
was
energy in that
fantastic.
room
It
was
was the first time I
it
had
was
seen the Strictly Hip as
so
well.
it
Now
was
I don't
just
mind
so
the cover
cool.
bands, but
It
Sarah,
was just
I
it
don't
was
know,
really
were you
special.
converted last
The
night?
energy in the room
Yeah,
was a lot of fun.
I'm glad
Everybody
that
was
got
just
to be
there
your
to have a
first
fun
tribute
time.
show. Yeah, because I think Horseshoe brought something out of people a little bit. Like
Yeah.
it tends to sort of level up everyone's game, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does make sense. It makes total sense. It
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, there were a lot of like really young people there for sure.
Yeah.
Mm. They really set.
I'm glad to hear you say that because, like, I was worried hearing your comments about going into it. I've seen the Strictly Hip
I
a
don't
couple
think
times
that I
too.
was
I just
converted,
flew up
but
a
it's
couple
funny
months ago and
because
caught a
I went up
show,
and talked
and
to Jeremy,
they're not putting
the
on like a
lead
mock
singer,
act. They're
very
actually just
briefly
playing the
after
music,
the
which
show
I
and
appreciate.
introduced
It's not
myself
the
and
same,
everything. And
but
I
it's what
told
you
him,
can
I
get.
said, I
So
have a very strong
it's that
opinion
live
about
energy
tribute
for bands
bands.
I've had
And he
before, and
chuckled and
it's
said,
just
so
different
do
than
I.
putting an album out.
And I said, well, I'm blown away, and this was a
Yeah.
phenomenal evening, and you guys did a wonderful job. And he was like, well, thank you very much. So it was funny that he had, echoed my sentiment about tribute bands, but they were they they really impressed me. And I don't know if I said it to you or if I said it to Darren, but it was like they had, I feel like 5 to 10 seconds for me where it was just like make or break, and we walked in and they were already started playing. I was like, all right,
Mhm.
this is okay. This is good. And it was worth
Yeah.
the wait. If I was going to see him for the first time, I think that I'm really grateful actually that the other times didn't pan out, because last night was just really special for a lot of reasons. And I think that's what made it great too. So it was worth the
Yeah.
wait. Yeah.
So I have a question for you on that then. Like, I have a question for you on that. Do you think it
Yeah.
resembles more of the live shows? You've been listening to a ton of live shows, or do you think it resembles more of them playing song choices from albums?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Hmm.
like non-alcoholic beer. It
Yeah.
satisfies the
Because I
need.
know you've been going hard
You
on
get the taste, you get the enjoyment. Um, but there's just something missing, and you can't quite put your finger on it. And then suddenly smacks you in the face, and it's like it's the goddamn band that's missing. But these guys are fucking great musicians in the Strictly Hip. Just
Well, that's what
I
I
spent the
said last
first.
night too, was their segue in New Orleans and in and out of Cinnamon Girl. And I was especially interested to see how they were gonna come from, no, it was 100th Meridian. I'm sorry. How they were
That's
gonna
right.
come
Yeah.
from Cinnamon Girl back into 100th Meridian. I was really like curious how they were going to do it, and they did it really, really well. And in that moment for me, it was like, all right, these guys are just really great musicians.
Hmm.
So
Mhm. Yeah,
uh
I was standing beside Sarah when they did
I
100th
don't know,
Meridian,
that's an
and
interesting
uh,
question.
and I thought that was pretty cool as well that
Yeah,
they
I
broke
don't
into
know, it was
Cinnamon Girl. I
interesting
thought
because
that was, I wasn't expecting it
that was
because
one
they
of the
had done, I
things
think
that
it was New
really
Orleans is
piqued
Sinking
my interest
earlier,
going
which
into it,
was
was like, how
my other highlight
was
I was going to mention. But
Jeremy
I actually
going
thought,
to
when it fired
do
up, the
certain
drummer
aspects of
was
the
hitting
live
so
show?
hard, my
Like,
eardrum was popping every time he was
were we
hitting.
just going to
And I
kind of get
remember
like
thinking,
copy, or
I
was
didn't
he just
notice him
going to
hitting this
kind of
hard for the
do
first
certain
couple
things? So
songs.
that was something that
And
was
so
really
I thought
interesting to
something was
me.
coming in
But
that
I
song, and I
liked
figured that
how
he was going to use that to do
they
a rant, much like
had
Gord would do,
put
but he didn't. What it ended
specifically
up
like
being
Cinnamon
was a
Girl in
drummer
there. So it
solo,
kind of was like an
and it was
homage
an
to
awesome
what
drummer
the
solo.
band used to
He did
do
a
live,
wicked
but really put
solo,
their
and I think
own,
was hitting even
just like
harder when
the
I
whole
got to his
concept. They
solo
pay
part. But
homage to it, but
those
then
were a
there's
couple
their
standouts for me
own
that I really enjoyed.
personality to it.
Was New
You're
Orleans is
you're
Sinking, and
following the
then 100th
formula,
Meridian when
but
they did
you're
Cinnamon Girl.
putting your
And of
own
course, I
little
didn't stick around to
extra
see the
spice
end,
into
so
the
there could have been
dish,
a
is
couple
how I
other.
feel. And
Their
so I think
guitarist
that
as
would be my
well on the
answer
far
to
stage
that.
right, who would play, I guess, Bobby Baker's
Solid.
part. I think there
Solid.
was a bit there where
Mr.
he was doing
Tucker,
some
any
slide and took a
highlights for
solo.
you last
I just
evening
can't remember which song,
from the
but
set?
it was pretty phenomenal as well. And to echo what Sarah said, they were great musicians. Like it was pretty damn good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was not expecting to be that entertained and enjoy the music as much. And I think when we first walked in, we kind of all got separated. So I was standing with Sarah for a bit. And I remember standing there, and I think it's just maybe just the way I perceive things, like the way my senses take it in. But I think I
Yeah.
was more focused on the visual of the people I was looking at, because when you actually go to see the Hip live, they're just kind of mesmerizing, especially Gord. So you're looking for that visual, vortex to draw you in, which all you kind of get is, but that's not the Hip. And then after a couple songs in, my senses went more to my hearing, and I started listening to the music and the singing, and that's when I think my head started bobbing, and I was like, "Yeah, okay." And then and that's I think when a lot of the crowd energy started to pick up as well, and then it was purely on the music from that point on, which was phenomenal. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Um, none none of the big name ones. Again, I've been out of town for like 10 years, so I'll catch a Strictly Hip show when I'm back in town once in a while. But like, it's nice to hear all that because it seems like a lot of these cover bands popped up after the last tour, and it seems more mimicky than
I think what
actual
I really
playing the
loved
music. I
is
love
how they
everything you
set the
said.
stage for the
Um,
music.
they,
You
they've
know,
been
they
playing
were
for
like,
20 years, and
we're
I've seen them in
from
bars and
Buffalo,
backyards, and
you're from
it's awesome
Canada,
how
there's
huge they
people
are
here
now.
from other
But
places, and
nothing,
we're all here for one reason,
nothing
and that's the
recent
music of
really
the
piqued my
Tragically Hip, and we're
interest.
just delighted to share that with you. And it's like, yeah, that's what it fucking should be, man. That's dynamite. And I
Mhm.
think right there, you get buy-in from the crowd. If they are skeptical, that hey, these guys are just trying to share. They love the band as much as we do. They're not trying to uh, besmirch them in any meaningful way or any unmeaningful way. It's just that's how it works. So there's that. Andrew, have you seen other hip cover bands or hip tribute bands, or is it just strictly hip for you as well? Hmm. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, there are a lot of them right now. We've got two actually right now in our chat. We've got a band called 50 Mission, who, if you follow along the podcast, they played our
That was actually
fundraiser
cool that Darren
for
was
Getting
there,
Hip to
JD.
the Hip.
I didn't know, I
And
didn't
we've
see him
got our
on the
friend
email
Craig
list, so I
from Gift
wasn't
Shop.
expecting. And I think I was the second one to
And
walk
he's
into the back
referring to
room.
From the Hip and the Ice Storm. And no, they did not play something on, I don't think.
That's what I meant to look and
Yeah.
see, and I didn't do. I've been on my.
Yeah, and that's Darren
I
from.
changed my phone screensaver to the photo
Oh
that
my
Darren
God, he's
posted
seen a lot
yesterday
of
because it makes
shows.
my heart so happy.
Tell everybody about the photo.
Oh, well, where did he posted it, like, online when he posted the new shows? So there's new live shows, and there's a new Buffalo show for me to listen to and a Syracuse show. So I'm excited about that, to dive into that this week. But he posted this photo of Gord with a Buffalo Sabres jersey on, and I was like nerding out about it. And then when we were at dinner last night, he was like, "Oh, I posted that for you." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So it's my new phone screensaver.
He's a
Gord with
legit
this
music
lovely
lover
Talia
and
there.
encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And this is
So
Darren
it's
from the
like,
Hip Archive
it's
that we're
just,
talking
it's hitting all the things. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, they did
And
not post last
I
night.
actually didn't clarify with him last night. Do you say it cap or cape or cape? Did anyone get that? It's cap. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Super guy.
He texted me
But
last
man, yeah,
minute, and he
every
was
time
like,
you made a
"Where are you
music
guys
reference,
meeting
I'd
up
say,
before
pardon?
the
And he'd
show?"
say,
And I'm like,
do you
"Wait a
know? And
minute,
he'd say the name of the
you're
band. I'm like,
coming tonight
no,
too?"
I
And
don't.
he's like,
Yeah,
"Yeah."
that
And I'm
happened
like, "Oh
about
my God,
6
I
or
had
7 times.
no idea."
No,
So,
no, I don't.
Yeah, I'm starting to think there's
Yeah.
like not a concert he misses.
Oh, yeah.
oh my God, we
Yeah.
were nerding out so hard. I have a list of books from last night because he just kept suggesting all these different books and things. And so I have a list
Yeah.
in my phone of books, and you know that I'm going to be reading them. And we were just talking about
Back when you could go to a
all the
show for
things.
10
And he
bucks.
actually
It
did
was easier to do
mention
that.
a couple other tribute
Yeah, no kidding.
bands, like for Genesis, and there was another one that he had mentioned. And so it was really interesting to get his take on some other
Yeah.
bands, tribute bands that would be worth my time to check out. So we'll see. Oh my God.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least.
It's cap.
It's the other day I was looking at a bunch of my old hip ticket
So
stubs,
fun.
and it blew me away how inexpensive it was. The first hip show that I went to in '92 was $19. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
No.
It was an
Yeah.
Well, and
It's got
outdoor
the
because
drum
he's
venue.
been
music scene
seeing
now.
music for so long, like we would be
Yes.
outside and he would tell me about like, "Oh, I saw this band at this little tiny ass bar here, and then they played with these people, and then they played with these," and he'd be like connecting this whole thing with this
It's like that
Canadian
meme.
history of bands, and it's just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
literally.
I'll tell you what, this is my theory. The
Yeah.
$20 to $30 concert ticket is now virtually owned by tribute bands.
Yeah.
You
You
could
know, like
probably
if you
shop
want to
it.
see
Yeah, you could
even
shop
an
in my
indie
closet,
band at
probably.
this point, you're paying $40 usually. You know, like it's
And at
Oh.
least at the
yeah.
minimum $40.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying for indie band, but definitely mainstream bands, it's $100 to get in now. That's
Yeah.
That's just what it is. Yeah. So hey, oh my God,
Oh my God.
that's so great. And for perspective, I mean, this is 30 years later, but for perspective, last night's concert was 30, 30 Canadian dollars, and it's 27, but still about $30. And, just 30 years ago. Jesus Christ, Jamie. That's a long time ago. Our coins were made of rock back then, weren't they, Jeff?
Listen, in my mind, when somebody says 30 years ago, I think it's the 70s. I don't know what to say. Like,
Me
that's
too.
just what I think.
I go
So,
vintage shopping, and like vintage right now is like late 90s. And it's like, all I want is a white collar shirt. Let's just find me a.
Nice.
Well, I got a bunch of questions that I have to find right now because they're about trivia bands or
Yes.
tribute bands, and they're about bands that we saw last night. And I want to keep us on theme, so I'm going to just pull up these questions really quickly. as I'm vamping here. While I'm vamping, I just really want to thank everybody for, our panelists today for being part of membership, and our guests watching on the live stream. This is pretty decent. We enjoy doing this every week, and we enjoy that you come out and participate. So fucking participate, man.
And it's fun. Like last night was fun. It was really great to meet everybody and spend that time together. And I would love to make that, a semi-regular thing if we could, and
Oh, that would be fun.
hang out. And it took me less than 2 hours to get home. So
Oh, that's good.
it was like an hour and 45 minutes to get home. So that was not bad at all. And I think it would be a lot of fun. And I mean, we're all going to hang out in October. So
yes,
come and buy tickets and come and hang out in October. That's going to be
Jeff
fun.
has already scored his tickets. We've got tickets. Matt from Portsmouth has bought a ticket coming all the way from Portsmouth, UK. So that's pretty exciting. We've got a couple coming from Oregon. Those are the ones that I can think of right now. So it should be a good show. We're going to, in the next few weeks, we should have some more news about the show to share with you. But I want to ask you guys a couple questions about tribute bands in general. But specifically with hip tribute bands. My limited experience, I've seen like 5. But there's dozens at this point. So what makes a good tribute band? Well, in your opinion, Sarah, now that what has kept you away up until this point? I know what brought you there last night. It was the engagement, and it was the people. It wasn't necessarily,
sure.
Oh, I'm going to see a tribute band, right?
For sure. I think for me, a lot of it, honestly, was my own music snobbery.
Sure.
And I'm not sure the right way to position that word in there. But I think a lot of it had to do with it was just me having such a just a picky opinion about it. Even when I would go to see bands and they would just they would pick like a song and they would cover one song in their set. And even then I would be really picky about it because I just think, it can be difficult to cover other people's songs. And sometimes I think people, when they play live music, just cover songs because they're on the stage and they have an instrument and they want to play it instead of, really honoring the art and the artist and the music. And so I think a lot of it has to do with that. Is I think if you are going to do it, I think you have to do it in a way that really respects the art and the artist and the music. And so I think that for me is just like, I want to make sure that that's happening. So, and last night I really felt that. And I think being in the room and having that environment and seeing that everybody is just there to keep the music alive. And it was just really special to see that. And I think that that's what, really did it for me last night, was just really going in with an open mind too. It's like, I'm going in, I'm going to be really open-minded and, really give them a chance. And I'm glad I did. But I can't say that I'm like totally on the board now. I mean, Darren, it did
That's
talk
fine.
about the one Genesis tribute band that I will check out because he just spoke so highly of them. And that was something I wanted to say too. We were talking about last night with like Genesis, and specifically like Peter Gabriel era Genesis. If anybody knows anything about that era of music, very theatrical. And so this band does that. They do the costumes, they do the whole part of it. But with Genesis, that's necessary because that's part of the albums from that era. It's part of the whole story. It's the part of the whole thing for them. And we talked about last night how some of the hip tribute bands, they'll dress just like band members and they'll do whatever. And for me, I don't feel
But
like with the hip
there's a market
that's
for that though
necessary.
too.
You don't need to do that. Where it's just more about the
It's not for
music
me, but there is
than
kind of a
trying to
market for
emulate
that
any of
too,
the
because
band
like you
members
think about like a
because
Kiss
that's
cover
not
band. If you go to
necessary
see a Kiss
in
cover band and they're not dressed up
putting
like
the
Kiss,
music
what
out
you doing?
there. And so that's
Like,
like how the
and there
difference
is
we were
some of
talking
that
about last night
for
with the
like
two
acts
types
that
of
don't
bands.
tour or don't play.
I think one
But
of
I
the
don't know.
things that makes it
I'm with you. I feel kind of
interesting
weird
with the
about it with the
Tragically
Hip
Hip
too. It
is
just
that you've
doesn't
got
feel right
such
to me.
an
Maybe it's a
iconic
too
front.
soon thing.
And
Yeah.
so there
But
are a lot of people that
we're
are
kind of using
probably,
tribute
when
band
they
and
are
cover
doing their
band
consideration
interchangeably. But are they different
for, forming a Tragically Hip
terms?
tribute band, they want to pay homage to that piece as well. But that's where it does sometimes become a little uncanny, right? It becomes, you see that Jaws shirt and you're sort of like, okay,
Yeah.
that's weird. That feels almost exploitive in a strange way.
Yeah. And it
I'm
feels
not
real
sure if anyone in
kitschy. And like
chat
that for
agrees.
me is what turns it off for me is like that kind of stuff. It's just like, I feel like you can't lose your identity
Yeah.
in it. I feel is, you're paying homage to it, but still keeping your identity.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was
Interesting.
thinking about this last night when we were using the words interchangeably, and we were obviously discussing the evening as it was unfolding, and that thought had crossed my mind as well. Is it the
Right.
same by definition? Is that an interchangeable? Is that correct? I don't know.
I feel like most people in the actual
Hmm.
band
Well, the funny part
would
about it too
refer
is
to themselves as
the
a
Hip
tribute
kind of
band.
started out
Like
as a cover band. They
that
were
would be the
playing the Stones in
referral
the beginning
for
in the bars.
themselves,
They say
because
that all the time. We
one of
started out
our
as a cover
one of
band.
our
Played the Stones. Like,
chatters
so
mentioned
it's weird that
earlier
they kind of started
that
that way
I
and
didn't throw
developed
the
their own
chat
thing
up there,
off
but
of
they
it.
were talking about. Oh, actually, I did throw it up there. The bands aren't around, or they're too expensive to
Mhm.
see, so it does keep you close, to the music, and that is the very definition of like a tribute.
Tribute.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's become the more respectful way because, like Andrew said, there's a market for this, and there are a lot of people paying, like we said, $20 to $30 to go out and see tribute bands. Where I think it gets weird is when the band still exists. That's sort of strange.
That's how I always felt too for me. That was definitely a thing, and it still is for me, is like, for me, I'm not going to go see like a Dave Matthews tribute band because like Dave Matthews is still touring. And so
Right.
it's just, that's kind of weird for me to go and see a tribute band for a band that's still touring.
Yeah.
I can remember when the Hip were rocking and rolling. Um, the area that I'm from, Road Apples
Sure.
was probably the most popular. We called them a cover band back then, not a tribute band, because but they were fantastic. And I think, JD, you posed the question, what makes a
Yeah.
cover band good?
Yeah.
100 people will give you 100 different answers, but
Well, it's
Now,
I
Kirk
think
interesting.
brings
first
up
and foremost, the
Kirk brings up an
music's got to
interesting
be good.
point
They've got to be
again
good
from the Daryl's
musicians, and
band here.
you've got to
What
have a
if those
confident
bands
singer.
don't get to the
But
cities
then
that the
I think
tributes play?
the X
And
factor
Yeah.
is
that's
that they have to be able to
often the
create an
case.
experience for the
Like
audience.
if you live in this area,
And if they can create an
they play
experience where they build
Toronto, but
energy
then
and they
they
get
don't play
the
another
crowd
city,
engaged, then I think mission accomplished. It's a
until
success.
Ottawa, and that's like 6 hours away,
But
and there's lots of cities in
again,
between. And
people go to bands and they don't like
how
the
do you
bands.
get
It could be
your
a
rock on,
professional band that sells
So
millions of records, or it could be
Well,
a
that kind of
cover
goes
band
along with
or
what
a
I was
tribute
going to
band.
say too, is like it's
And
interesting
you
that
you
like
don't
the
know if that
Strictly Hip's
band's for
they just
you
did their 30th
unless you go and see
anniversary.
them and make a
And
decision.
so they've been playing for
But then
30
the band
years and
creates
the band
a
just
following.
celebrated
So I
their
think
40th
any
anniversary.
tribute band
So
who has created a
it's
following
interesting that there's all
that,
these tribute bands that
I think
were
has the
touring
credentials of being
and
a
gaining their
good
own
tribute
fan
band.
base,
And
in
last night,
congruency of the band
with the
releasing
Strictly Hip,
music and touring
again, the musicians were
themselves.
great. Their singer was fantastic. And I thought they did a great job of creating pretty good experience. And looking around the room, I think the mission was accomplished last night there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
because how many people were there that weren't huge Hip fans? They just went with their friend or they went with their sister, and so they might get turned on to something like that. I mean, my son's 10, and we went to a Hip show up at, I think it was Babeville in Buffalo a couple months ago. Like, just the amount and swath of people there, it's cool.
Agree.
I was talking to somebody who was there last night via chat today, who was 70 years old, and they were there. So what a wide swath. We saw some young people, but we saw some older people as well. What a swath. What a great thing this music does, you know?
It keeps that
We can
community
all agree on
alive,
that.
and it's not unlike what you are doing and what this is doing. And it's the same kind of thing, is still keeping that community together and keeping the people connected, but that's just their way of doing it, is singing the music
Exactly.
and having that piece of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's uh it's an interesting subject for sure. We could probably talk about it more. Um we've got a comment from the chat indicating, and I remember this chapter, which is funny because I don't normally remember things. But Michael Barkley's book uh has the whole chapter on tribute bands. And I really wish when we had him on the show, we could have put the screws to him and got him to name the ones that he liked the best. And he doesn't get into that in a granular way in the book, but there's allusions that are made, I think. So, but that's something for sure.
I'm gonna have to
Anything else
reread
on
this
tribute
chapter
bands in
now.
general? Yeah, oh yeah. Listen to
I'm
it.
gonna have
It's,
to read
it's
it now.
Strombo does the reading of that book. So
Oh, all right. I'll listen to the audiobook because I've already read it. So I'll listen to it again this time. So,
yeah.
okay, cool.
Well, that's what we've got for you this week, folks. Hope you enjoyed yourself. We've got a rich, tragically hip community that is burgeoning. It's springtime in Tirana. So we are going to water this motherfucking plant and we're going to grow it big and strong right up through October 4th when we all get together and dance like a bunch of idiots. So there's that. Andrew, Jeff, Sarah J, thanks so much for coming out again this week. Next week we'll be back. We don't have a theme at the moment, but I've got a couple ideas. If you've got a theme idea, send me an email, ttthtop40@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. So there's that. Thanks for stopping by. Pick up your shit. Why did you laugh? I don't know.
This weekend, only at Macy's, it's our lowest prices of spring. How low? Diamond rings, pendants, and earrings, only $399, originally $1,500. Ninja blenders, now $89.99. And $395 men's designer suits, only $99.99. So if you're wondering why you should shop Macy's lowest prices sale, well, the name pretty much says it all. It's our lowest prices for one weekend only. Starts tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.